essentially a monopoly on force.
Correct.
If I'm correct.
The low IQ on this one was insane. Yeah. Rick James and the Predator have a baby, and the baby goes to a pride parade. That's what we're looking at. Much love, Ursh. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect.
Do you want me to walk you through the argument?
No, I'm going to elaborate. Thank you. And that rights exist through physical force, and that our legal system is based on physical force. So I guess I kind of just want to hear you elaborate on that now, if you're welcome. Rights
are basically the secularists, the naturalist secularists, the real religion. The real religion is freedom to do anything. Rights are one of their sacraments, one of their dogmas. I should say. It's better. It's actually more accurate to say dogma. The dogma of secularism is rights. Totally a fabricated belief. There's no empirical evidence. Their empiricist tradition cannot justify rights. Nature can't justify rights. Reasoning can't justify rights. It's a fiction. And deep down they know that force is the only thing they're after. They really know that. So they'll use force to pass their laws for equality and all of these things. They'll borrow the arm, they'll rent the arm of force, and then they'll pretend that they're for liberty. They pretend that they're all for plurality and everyone believing, doing what they want, etc., etc. And really, they're just full of shit. Their dogma is rights exist. They have a doctrine of equality. Their theosis is a type of equality, progress. Their baptism is the education system. That's their entrance into their church. And then they pretend they have no real beliefs, right? They pretend they have a position. They're like, I'm not assuming any beliefs. I would never force my beliefs on you. Yeah, right. Okay. Just admit it that you would. I wish Christians and everyone counter to Christianity would just admit when they come to a debate or they step on the podium for their politics and say, nope, I actually believe this. This is my conviction. I think society should be run this way. And because I think society should be run this way, I'm admitting, at least in good faith, at least I'm consistent, that I want laws informed by my theology. That doesn't force you to believe anything, by the way. It means that decency laws, codes of ethics are informed. That doesn't tell you that if you violate it, you go to jail even, right? Altervoid, $10. Thank you so much. Brings us up to 47. No, this debate, I was confused when she says force doctrine theory. How's it a theory? It's really not a theory. I picked up on that too, but I just kind of let it go.
So you want my argument for
Petro, $2. Have you checked this game out? Which game out?
For the force doctrine?
Yep.
Okay, so what force doctrine is saying is
the game. Did you send me a game? I'm sorry. Sent Austin Titilio helps out with the population crisis, adds another 5 to the work visa. Thank you so much for that.
Very simple. That feminism, if you at least agree with my definition, and it seems broadly feminists do, that it's a movement towards egalitarianism and equity and the removal of patriarchy. If you can't have an oppressed class without an oppressor class, at least not from the Marxist feminist view. In the case, if women are being oppressed, they're not being oppressed by wolves, they're being oppressed by men, right? So if that's the case, then my argument to them is that whatever you believe this oppression is, you will actually have to appeal to men in order to either relinquish whatever this oppression is, or concede to whatever it is that they want, because collectively women actually cannot overthrow any patriarchal systems. They rely on the force of men. And so if men, anytime they want to, decide to remove women's rights, there's actually...
Play Expedition 33, okay.
Not anything women...
Is that on Xbox or is that on the computer?
Can do about it, but the opposition is not true. The opposite is not true. Women cannot collectivize and take away men's rights.
Okay, so...
She didn't understand most of the words, yeah. She was decent at reciting some things earlier on, but...
Are you essentially saying that women do not deserve the right to fight for their own free will or have free will?
No, it's not free will. She kept confusing free will with capability. I don't know why. I don't know if I actually don't know if that was purposeful or is it just ignorance that she's conflating free will and capability. For instance, if you jail someone, you actually still don't violate their free will. They still have their free will intact. They just have a restricted capability to use it.
Yeah, that's an ought claim. I'm not making an ought claim. I'm trying to get us to the descriptor first. So instead of making a prescriptive statement, I'm starting with a descriptive statement. What is true? And then we can worry about what should be true after we can determine what is true.
Okay, but I'm trying to see, like, structurally, how does that work in the real world? Are you saying that women should not fight for their rights?
I'm not.
Hello, Rick James. Predatroon. He just said he's not making a should claim. What is your brain typically smaller than his?
Listen, let's back up so I can distinguish two things.
Okay.
Is, ought, right?
Sure.
I'm not trying to bridge the is-ought gap. I'm trying to start with a
She's like, what the hell? What's an is-ought gap? What? Are you saying I have a gap in my brain? Are you looking at my teeth? Hey, Jimbob. Oh, sorry. Whoops. Just lost my chat. Where are you? Oh, there you go. Okay. Mike P. 10 bucks. Hey, Jimbob. Hoping you and your family are doing well. Thanks for the entertainment. You're welcome. Thank you for donating to the entertainment, sir. Speaking of, 2 more to go to reach the goal. If you're entertained, drop a tip. Help Jortlandia raise the money to stay afloat. The other Kyle, thank you so much. Andrew makes a is claim, chicks, so you think this ought to be that way?
descriptive claim.
So you think
So
ought is?
if
So
the descriptive claim is true, then we can move through to the prescriptive side of it. But right now, you would either need to agree with me that descriptively I'm right or that descriptively I'm wrong.
I can't agree with you to say that descriptively you're right until you apply what you're saying in theory to the practice of modern day society. How to...
You dummy. You dumb Rick James looking... Are you not entertained? Ayo. Thank you so much for that. One more. Dude, Andrew just said, he described how it's already applied. Already applied. Forced doctrine is already applied. He's describing what it's already been. Up to this point, in reality, that's the case. Okay, well, I just need you to describe what it is so we can get to how it ought to be applied. Alter Void, $5. The reason she kept on with the free will is because she wanted to redefine rights to free will. That's correct. Yeah. And so then anything she wants can be right. Yeah. Yeah. Even if you granted that, Alter Void, which is a total jump, rights to free will, even if you granted it to her, it would self-detonate her position because suddenly people that would have to do whatever they want. Like, and there were certain things which she'd have to argue against. The other Kyle, $10, reaches the goal. Go! Thank you, Jortlandians. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Your equal force objection. How does this principle work in society? What are you saying in terms of
I'm
how
saying that
women and
because
men
that
coexist?
Yeah, I think that because that is the case, that men deserve to have various privileges that they're not given in society, which they should be given in society.
So what are the privileges that you think that men should have that women should not have?
Well, primarily, I think that if you're going to look at an equalization, what I would do prescriptively would be to roll voting back. And that's for both sexes. I think that rolling voting back for both sexes is a good idea, and have some sort of perhaps like one house voting system or one marriage voting system, or people who have done some sort of collective service to the state for a voting system. I think that those things would all be very good systems for everybody.
Why?
Now I would apply that, I would apply that broadly to men, and I would apply that to women. I think that right now men get the shaft because men are required to do a lot of jobs that women are not, which keeps society going, and women are not doing those things.
I use that in my debate against not so Eurobright is that we can go to force and say, well, women rely on men for enforcement of rights, which is a great argument and gets right to the crux of it, like gets right to the point. I would never abandon that angle. But it did occur to me that the leverage extends to keeping society afloat, like the operations of society, at least in the modern sense. Guess what? If you didn't live in a modern world and you cut back modernity and technology and suddenly you're closer to the wilderness, closer to nature, the further you are from rights. And so the argument from force, the force doctrine argument, if you make it about, well, it's an enforcement of rights and violation of rights and all the processing and the justice system is wholly dependent on force. That's true. But even society itself, like everything you see that's built and maintained, like all of the structures that are maintained, not just built, but maintained, they're all dependent. Similarly, why? Because that's also force. There's a reason it's built wholly by men, mostly. Because it's force, just like enforcement. So the enforcement, the force doctrine can be transposed onto building, erecting societies, civilizations itself. The two go hand in hand. And so the leverage men have is another argument I brought up against not so erudite is, isn't it the case that the brute force men who sweat and cut themselves and come home late and wake up super early and do all of these tasks, isn't it the case that they could in fact just stop doing things? Wouldn't that be a leverage point? In fact, that's even true of basic boycotts and what's the reversal? Strikes. You know, the strikes. Strike is a form of leverage, economic leverage, time leverage, right? You're putting the pressure on the person you're trying to leverage to make a choice, sort of an ultimatum. They're not all equal, but if you take that approach, a strike approach to males who construct and maintain society and its operations, its infrastructure, such that then on the infrastructure we can then scurry about and make transactions and know that they're going to be guaranteed, and we can take them to court if they fail. We can move to place, we can get on a train, we can do all these things, right? This is all just a given. This is why feminism is so rampant, is because modernity allows it to be rampant. This is not an argument against maintaining a modern society, by the way. I'm not an accelerationist. I'm not going to say destroy society so that these feminists get in line. But I am saying that the people who run society could seriously just not wake up tomorrow and be like, good luck. Well, in that instance, the only alternative is another group of men come in and do the job.
And because of that, I don't understand why it is that women can nullify their votes and disenfranchise them, and most importantly, vote to send them to wars they don't have to go fight in.
So you would like to disenfranchise both the men and women's votes?
Mostly. Most of them, yes. I think would be a better idea.
People think the word disenfranchise is like a bad thing. It's like we technically disenfranchise our children. We disenfranchise people. It's always like seen like that. That word is like they smear it. They use that word as a smear. And you're like, okay, cool. So you're not a parent.
A cheat.
Thanks for letting us know you're not a parent.
Well, it would be the...
Imagine your kids like, you're disenfranchising me. That would be so funny. Kids, the kids use the modern words for being disempowered in a political sense, and they use it in the home. Like it's a perfect summary of what feminism is. Feminism is just a bunch of children who have bigger bodies, who are asking daddy for an allowance or to be able to do the things they want to do. And a protest is a tantrum. That's what a protest is. It's a temper tantrum. It's identical to my son. You know, he wants a lollipop, and then he throws a tantrum on the ground. And I'm like, nice protest, dude. You want me to make you a sign? We want lollipops. We want lollipops. No lollipops, no peace. No lollipops, no peace. It's like I just laugh at them. I'm like, you have no power. That's not power, son. Now get off the ground, you little bitch. Get out the way, yo.
It would achieve the same thing our founders basically wanted to achieve, which is that they thought that you would have to have a stake in the country in order to vote.
But if you live in the country and if you exist in the country and if
I want Oreos, I want Oreos.
You're being legislated by the law.
That's all I hear with protests. You see a clip of it, that's all I see. I just see Oreos, candy, chocolate milk.
Laws that the country is making. Don't you have a stake in that?
No, not always.
You don't?
In fact, many times you don't. Many times, many people actually get more back from the state than they put into the state. So that's at the expense of other people.
Who is that?
So there's lots of people who get a mass amount back from the government that they never pay to the government. This can happen through things like Social Security, disability, things like welfare.
Oh, here comes Vagine and hot take from India.
Jimbob bro. Here's something I don't think that a lot of people understand about these power dynamics between men and women. It's a common assertion that only 3.5% of a population is needed to succeed in some sort of revolution or rebellion, because most people will abstain from aiding or opposing either side. I think it's so severe of a power difference that 1 to 5% of men could dominate 100% of all women if they have no male support.
That's a good point. Yeah, the key thing I heard in that, Vagine, whoever sent that, thank you so much. The key thing I heard in that is it's always a revolutionary spirit. The whole thing is under the assumption that reality is a certain way and it shouldn't be a certain way. And then the irony is, and this came up with my debate with Not So Bright, is the irony is that you have to appeal to the structure you're trying to oppose. That's the irony. You have to appeal to the structure, in this case patriarchy, force, to then make any sort of headway against what? The patriarchy, force. It's just so backwards and stupid. It's childish. It's like the kid asking the parent to give him something and then putting it on the scoreboard and being like, see, I negated your power because you gave me something. It's like, no, you affirmed my power. All they're asking for is some sort of grace. It's like asking the king for grace. That's what the feminist movement really is. Or asking the opposition, other men, to build up unity against the king. It's basically like a coup. The only thing feminists could possibly do is some type of coup using other men. That's it. And that's where you get these simps. Where the feminist male uses pro-feminism to get in the pants of the feminist. That's all they're doing. Those are the most egregious. I mean, those are the people who should be kicked out of society first. Imagine an OnlyFans brand of cookies called Oreos. Nicely done. Appreciate that. $20 from Payne Zombie. Thank you so much for the Jortlandian taxation. Paying your taxes. See, taxes here are like what they were like back in the early days. In Jortlandia, it's similar to the early days where it's the privileged. It's the highest virtued men and women who it's their obligation to pay the taxes for the rest. And so it's kind of a way of it's basically a way of affirming your status, you know. It's the elite who actually super chat here. Beef Sleazy, thank you so much. I got Chat GPT 2 saying rights are made up with force. That's funny. Nice. Scrib says, who would win, 100 women versus one John Jones? John Jones. It would take a while, but definitely John Jones. Submit to Rome.
Things like even earned income child
wins.
credit that you may receive even though you don't actually pay anything into the system or very little into the system.
But it's a crime to lie on your taxes.
Yeah, crime is enforced by men.
Isn't that tax fraud to claim a dependent?
No. There's just
that is tax fraud.
No. It's not
dependent
Listen, it's not
that you're
tax fraud. I'm saying that
care
there's
of.
people who get more out of the system than they put into the system.
Okay, but they're still at stake because they still live here now. Are their lives not at stake if we're legislating them?
But that wouldn't follow that because they live here, they deserve the right to vote, though.
Yes, no taxation without representation. That's the point of representative.
No, that's just begging the question that's a thing that we should hold to. That's the thing in question. Andrew's saying, no, that's not, I'm challenging that. She's all like, no, you can't challenge voting because voting.
Democracy is that everyone is represented.
Then how come?
No, that's not even true, by the way.
The founding fathers.
That's actually not even true in the representative democracy. Not everyone's represented evenly, equally.
Didn't give everybody the right to vote from the beginning.
I mean, the founding fathers also
It's not a direct democracy, lady.
endorsed and owned slaves.
I would actually love it, honestly. Anyone else would take the risk? If there was like a 10-year span where we used direct democracy, would anyone else take the risk in using direct democracy to implement their preferred system of governance? I mean, it is a risk. That's a risk.
Do you agree with chattel slavery?
Well, just let her finish. Go ahead.
I mean, the founding fathers also endorsed and owned slaves.
Just let her finish.
But
Do you believe in chattel slavery?
Yeah. So
Do you believe in
you
it?
do realize that they could do bad thing, right? I can agree that's bad thing, but that has nothing relationally to do with how they set up the system of government.
I mean, I thought
one Andrew versus 100 pickle jars. That's
this
funny.
was going to be a debate.
To be fair, it was an olive jar.
Feminism. Honestly, I think that's kind of wild because it sounds.
Dustin Buck, $5. So Wilson wants to get rid of an elite. Dustin Buck, you're the one. Dude, here's your chance to call in again. Give the audience a taste of what happened the other night. So Wilson wants to get rid of an elite ruling class and replace it with an elite ruling class, people who are more qualified. Yeah, but the thing is, the question is, here, let me put it this way, Dustin, at least from my perspective. I'm not going to speak exhaustively on Andrew's. If it's the case that a society definitionally is ordered with force, then it would follow that the force would then hold some type of view that when you use force or when you shouldn't use force, what you should legislate and enforce the legislation of or not, right? This is all informed by what, Dustin? A theology or the absence of secularism. Just willy-nilly utilitarianism, equality, all these bullshit taglines, right? So in a sense, yeah. You can't escape that there's going to be class differences in society. If you want to call that elite, the question of who's elite, if you're going to decide elite means simply people in more powerful positions than other people, guess what? You don't get away from that in any society. Dustin, are you some sort of egalitarian, right? You know, did you want to rewrite? I appreciate the super chat, but do you want to rewrite it with a lisp? Yeah, in a sense, it's probably the case that if you want to call it, if you want to say that there's a section of society that's qualified to rule, and if you want to call them elite, fine. That's not really a defeater to anything. Because guess what? If you don't take that view, what happens is a vacuum occurs, and the so-called elite that take up the vacuum, that fill the vacuum, they're the elite now running. Now what are you asking? Should those people be in those positions? Well, if you think no, you're definitionally saying, well, I'm going to take those positions, unless you're offering some other system. What's the other system?
Sounds like you're disenfranchising men. So who do you think would...
What's wrong with defranchising men, dude?
Are you trying to go back?
I'm not.
You're taking away.
I'm not disenfranchised.
Dixie Fiend, I think both Dustin and Wilson have valid points. Oh, questions, you said. No, it's a fair question, but it's just like the question kind of assumes, at least Dustin. Now, I'll let Dustin talk for himself. Dustin, do you think there's something wrong with a society that has a class that is more powerful than the majority?
Franchising men, calm down. I'll explain.
But if you're taking away the votes of a man because he is not, I guess, landowning, is that what the... What's the
Well,
criteria for having a vote?
I think ultimately more men would be voting because they would have more.
When did this olive jar defeat Andrew in the Force Doctrine? I wouldn't say that. It would have been bad if she opened it and he couldn't, but it's not. That wasn't the case. Brian couldn't open it either.
Or stake.
So can I ask, can every man go to prison?
Yeah.
Okay, if they commit a crime, they can go to prison?
Yeah.
Everyone can do that?
Yes.
Okay. And everyone is in this country has to abide by the laws of this country, otherwise they will go to prison, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so why wouldn't they be allowed to vote on the representatives that define those laws? That is a stake. If you can go to prison for committing a crime that is created by the government.
No. What you get, people putting people in jail if they commit a crime is actually a amenity. You don't get that. Already is something. That's not a trade-off. It's like, oh, you give me something, therefore you give me something. That doesn't make any sense. Oh, you live in a society where there's a system of governance that actually, on your behalf, processes and prosecutes people who do shitty things under the law. Therefore, you get more? So stupid. That's so dumb. That's like saying you pay your taxes, right? And then let's say or let's say this. You go to an event and there's a show and they give you a free show. So essentially it's free for most people. That's kind of like the analogy. It's mostly free to have this thing called the show. Now the show is the metaphor for the law. And the show does a song and dance. And you go, well, I'm an observer of the show and I watched and I didn't talk throughout the show. Therefore, I get to help write the show. That's her logic right now. Well, I mean, I went to the show and sat peacefully in the show. I didn't scream and yell in the show. I watched the show. I watched the musical shows. I watched the whole play, 3 hours worth. Don't I get to write what the show is? No.
Then you do have a stake legislatively in the laws that the government creates.
That still wouldn't follow that you would need to vote.
Yes, you would need to vote.
Why?
You want to vote for the representatives that create laws that are just and fair to you.
Yeah, why? Like you could have
because you could go to prison.
Okay,
that's a huge stake.
I'll show you, right? Can kings put you in prison?
Yeah.
Can kings also pass just laws?
Sometimes, maybe.
Okay, so
maybe not.
if kings pass just laws, why do you need to vote?
Well, why did we fight an entire
answer the
revolution?
question before you ask it.
That's also pretty much a defeater right there.
Another one. I just answered all of yours. If a king passes just laws, why would you need to vote?
Because a king can also pass unjust laws.
So can legislatures.
Sure, but if you have a stake.
If you have so she's saying you should have a stake in passing unjust laws. Great work, lady. Way to go, Rick James.
In that, and if you're able to represent for your legislator, you can vote a legislator out.
Yeah, but you can.
Oh, is it an echo? Okay, it's because I have this open. My bad. Okay. For some reason, when I add I know why. It's picking up on my browser, and so it's doubling the browser audio.
Also rebel against kings. So like that's what I'm saying. Your
it's better now, right?
position doesn't follow. It doesn't actually follow for you to say that because you can be imprisoned inside of a nation that somehow gives you the right to vote.
Well, because you have a stake. You're saying
it's like if Barbie released a Predator doll.
Hang on. I'm falsifying your claim. I'm falsifying your claim. If you claim kings can make just laws, right?
Yes.
Then I don't understand. Why would people need to vote when kings are making just laws?
Well, then why would we leave the monarchy
Answer the question.
of England if kings can?
Then why Then why this and why that? Then why
Make just laws.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Why did we think because England bad, we need to what? Give a bunch of the consequence anyway. It wasn't immediate, but the consequence was England bad, therefore Hawk Tuah votes. I'm gonna meme that, dude. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's so I'm so glad we avoided the king of England. Oh man, that was a close one. Hawk Tua votes. Yeah, it's worse.
So why would we leave?
Well, in that case, you had a nation apart that had a rebellion against the king.
Yes,
that's what was
sure.
going on. But kings have been rebelled against historically under certain circumstances many times.
So you'd like to go back to feudalism? Like
No,
you
it's not
don't believe in
feudalism.
democracy? Well, yeah, that is.
No,
the
it would be
No, that's not.
feudalism
it would
is under a monarchy.
it would be called limited democracy, which is exactly what we had here. Do you think we had feudalism because most people couldn't vote here?
We had limited democracy, and then there were like several
She just keep dodging.
many uprisings
She makes one claim, he refutes it.
against that limited democracy because everyone
No,
deserves
there
the
wasn't
right.
uprisings really against that. The only uprising that I'm aware of in American history against America was the Civil War.
The Civil War, the Civil Rights
But that
movement,
wasn't about
the first
voting.
feminist movement,
That
the
wasn't
second
about
feminist
voting.
movement, the Civil Rights movement.
No,
the
no,
voting rights movement.
no. The
All of
Civil
those were
War
about-
wasn't about voting.
Well, I mean, it was about the owning of chattel slaves.
So not about voting then?
which is also about human.
If you don't vote, you're a chattel slave. That's her. She thinks she's making it valid.
And civil rights.
But not about voting, though.
But voting is a civil right.
I don't know. I'm not sure that I believe in
It's
this
about freedom and it's about
conceptual-
representation.
Yeah, so
The
let's
point is
So
representation.
let's back up.
That's what voting is.
Yeah.
Voting is representation and democracy.
I understand, but you haven't actually made the positive case for why people need to be able to vote.
People need to be able to vote because they have a stake in the legislation in this country. If you can be imprisoned in this country, if you can be robbed.
That's not a stake. No, that's basically like a perk. That's a perk. That's not feet in the game. It's a perk. She's basically making the argument that if you can be affected by policy, you should be able to inform policy. But that's not true of anything else in the world. It sounds almost like, okay, wait, maybe. But no, it's not. Because that's like saying, if the company policies can affect me, therefore I should be able to write the company policies. No. If the strategies of war, right, the generals, the plans, which have to be fairly secretive, if those affect you in any way, therefore you should be able to help craft the strategies of war. I mean, if the city planning, the way a city is completely planned altogether, right? If it affects you in any way, you should have a say on the engineering of the city. It's just like saying, I want to talk. I want to say something. It says nothing about knowledge of the city planning. It says nothing about whether or not your input is going to waste time and resources. It says nothing about your knowledge of the art of war. It doesn't warrant you any input at all. Dr. Tetanus, $5. Why should I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? Patriot man. Nicely put. 300 million tyrants.
Of your bodily autonomy by the legislators of this country, then you should be able to have a stake in.
You're called in? I don't see you. What do you mean you're called in? I don't see you. Here. On my side, it would be that you called in. So, click that link, Dustin. I don't see him in the call. There's no one in the call right now. On my side, it rings. It rings, and I have to say okay. I don't hear you ringing on my side. Hit that link, Dustin. Hit that recent whereby link right there, okay?
In what the laws that those legislators are making.
Well,
no?
let's see if this makes sense. Do you agree with me that individual voters don't actually have very much power at all?
Individual voters, no, but that's the point of a collective voting body.
I'm with you. So
Yeah.
individuals already don't really have very much power just because they can vote, right?
Sure.
So isn't it the case, actually, that what you're advocating for is political tribalism? Because you don't have individual power as a voter, you actually have to tribalize with other voters in order to have any sort of collective power, right?
Well, you're taking away power from all the voters,
Well,
so it
can
wouldn't
you
even be
answer my
individuals.
question, please? Tribalism, the idea that you, as the individual, do not have power, right?
Yes.
You do have to collectivize with other people, right?
Okay, but how is taking away
can you
a
answer
vote?
yes or no?
Every time.
No.
Yeah. Okay. No.
But
okay.
here's my question: how is taking away more people's votes disincentivizing political tribalism?
Yes,
because now I have to band with someone. Because now I have to band with someone who has a vote. I don't even get a stake. So you're saying because people don't have enough power to vote, I'm going to take what little power they do have.
You're not
away.
answering my question, though.
Look, if someone doesn't have the power to vote, let's say they just don't have the power to vote, you're not taking their power to vote. If like a person who's incapacitated or in jail or mentally doesn't have the power to vote, not letting them vote is just redundant. It's not taking more power.
It just doesn't make sense
Yeah, I
structurally.
know, but you got to answer my question.
It just doesn't sound like you believe.
Dustin, where are you at? Why isn't it calling in?
in
It sounds like you
democracy.
need to
ringing? Is
answer
it
my
ringing?
question, though.
It sounds like your question
Are you running? Is it ringing or are you running?
is
Yeah,
meant to
can
trap
you-
me
can
because
you
your
just-
argument
can you
is
just
riddled with
answer the
logical
question?
fallacies.
Just answer the question before I throw this cup at you.
please.
It sounds-
What's fallacious about my argument?
You're saying that people do not have a stake in this country, therefore they do not have a right to vote.
It's not what I said.
Yes,
What you're
it
doing
is.
is a straw man. Are you not promoting political tribalism?
If you need to have but that's how voting works. It's about a majority.
So then you are
Yes.
promoting collective political tribalism, right?
So voting and then the will.
Hey, I spilled some water on the floor here. Can I turn you upside down and clean it up real quick? Thanks a lot.
Of the majority is
Thanks a
essentially
lot. In fact, you're a woman. You should be able to. Can you do a handstand yourself and clean up the mess I made on the floor? Thanks.
political tribalism is what you're saying?
Well, it's not really the will of the majority.
It is the will
Here's
of
what
the
happens.
majority.
No, not really.
Do you understand how voting works?
Do you understand?
Do you?
Yes.
Okay, well then tell me how it's the will of the majority when a California legislator gets elected.
It's not the will of the majority. That's what's. Yes. Was I not capable of recalling on the spot the three branches? Did I stutter it up a little bit? Yeah. But she thinks that voting is some sort of majority rule. I mean, what in the? If you've taken a duties approach, a Christian duties approach, you're in a much more powerful position anyway. By the way, you don't escape the duties position. Even if you granted rights as some sort of metaphysical ontology that was real, you would still need to provide an ethical, deontological position on why we ought to acknowledge and value rights. That's why this debate with the Leibowitz character, Bagel, was so hard to probably listen to, is because he kept assuming because he assumes rights exist, therefore we ought to acknowledge them. Well, I don't grant either. Christian Mario, $5. Still like the tune in, but it's rare I catch you live lately. Yeah, thank you for tuning in, Christian Mario. I never heard this argument. I mean, I've heard it people use the term tribalism or whatever. It's usually a pejorative. But when Andrew brought this up and I was listening, I was like, oh, that's interesting. In a sense, a state is a sort of tribe, but it's like a fractured tribe. So like a state could be a tribe if they all became sort of homogenous and cohesive in their views and values, which kind of generally happens. Like you move to a state and you can generalize the sort of ethos of the state. But in a sense, he's right. This is like, it could be tribalism. Can I touch duties? No, enslaved by truth. However, duties are at least tied to your will. Rights, there's nothing to act on. It's something you think you deserve. I deserve a bear not to eat me. No, you don't. I deserve my life. No, you don't. God could take your life. I deserve this. You deserve nothing. Enslaved by truth. You deserve nothing. Oh, I closed the video. Fail. Jimbob fail. All right, enough of the punishment.
Yeah,
That's what
states are voting.
Where is the will? The will is in our action, just like faith is in action, enslaved by truth. I thought you were a Christian. I thought you were a Christian, enslaved by truth. What are you? What are you? What are you? Where's this will thing? You're a Christian. Where's this will? I'm not an empiricist, dude. The will is in your action. Actions are reference. You can actually look at someone's actions and look at their will in action. There's actions. Rights aren't actions. There's no right action. There's not a right action. The will, at least the will, enslaved by truth, has a movement to it you can point to. A right doesn't. And you're like, yeah, but rights are the action. No, they're not.
Voting for their own interests, right?
But states will vote for the governors.
Yeah.
Why would I get to vote?
Where are these actions? You know your actions. You know what you did last night. You know what you did last night. Now, you had the right to do it, right? Enslaved by truth because it was legal. But you know what you did. I know what you did. Why are you so mad? No, I'm assertive. Why are you so feminine?
For
you want to call in? You want to come at me? Huh?
Wait, hold on, pause.
Hold on.
Listen to me. Why would I get to vote for the
Listen to me.
governor of, let's say, Tennessee, if I
Right.
don't live in Tennessee?
Makes sense.
Okay.
So it's almost
So
like
then why-
these individual states, right? They vote along tribal lines. For that state's particular interest, right?
Yes, and
They're
then
not
each state has a representative
Right,
in
which
the
they said.
collective government.
You have the right to remain silent. Yeah, that's not actually even ultimately true either. You have permission to. You have permission. They should just say permission. They should change the whole language. You have permission to remain silent. Another thing is people say you have a right to an attorney. No, you don't. That's someone else's labor. That is someone else's labor. Do you have a right to an attorney? Yeah, if it's available, if they agree to it, but they actually know. That's what kind of set me off of the whole like the standard fair conservative talking points about like nobody has any right to anyone's labor and this kind of stuff. And yet Ben Shapiro celebrates Israel for having mandatory military enrollment. But then he comes back home, right? And then he's all, no, you have a choice. No, you can't utilize someone's labor. You cannot make signing up for the military mandatory because it violates their autonomy and their will. It violates their voluntarism. And then he goes back to Israel. He gets on his little plane that has a little tiny yarmulke on it. He's like, "You guys are great. Raise your hands in the room if you're in the military. Unbelievable. I wish we had this sentiment back home. It's voluntary, you little worm. It's involuntary in Israel." But then I started thinking about, wait, do you have a right to an attorney, Ben Shapiro? Yes, you have a right to an attorney. Isn't that labor? Yes, that is labor. Okay, cool. So what happened? I thought you don't have a right to people's labor. Well, I mean, the plane has curls. Yeah, it's just the curls flopping in the wind.
Sure. in the federal government, right? You're talking about in our Senate and in our Congress, right?
Yes.
Great. So let's start with this. If it is the case that you have California and Nevada, these are two states which are next to each other, you agree, right?
Yes.
Can these states vote against each other's interests when it comes to resources?
In the federal government, yes.
No, even at the state level they can, right?
Why would they be able to at the state level? I can't vote for the Nevada governor.
Areas where these good
Individuals choose.
I just told you how we would apply it. You would have stakeholder democracy.
Okay, so that's just so one day we're just going to flip a switch and have that. Like, I don't understand.
No, what do you mean? Okay, you could have an amendment for it. You could repeal the 19th Amendment. You could...
So you want to repeal the right to vote?
Or just replace it. It wouldn't be... What I'm talking about is universal suffrage. You keep on making a conflation in terms.
I always make this, and sometimes maybe these are too big of jumps, admittedly. But I can never unsee the parallels between a secular practice in society and it borrowing from a Christian practice. So there's all these categories of practice. And another one that I'm seeing here is that these people think voting, it's almost like their sacrament. It's almost like equivalent to someone yearning for receiving the Eucharist. It's like to them, it's like this innate value of being human is to participate in the God of government. You know what I mean? They're like, I want to, you can't stop me from partaking. Like, I would like to partake. Like, they have their own type of ceremonial church. They just have a godless, personless church of pluralism and freedom. It's just like, this is the result of like a do as thou wilt church. Like a do as thou wilt church will never have set traditions, but it'll always invert the set traditions. And you could always point it out. You could always point out how they take the same practice and they just reapply it into a different scenario. And voting is one of these things where when you check people on voting, they have like a glitch. Like they have this moment where if they don't have a vote, they don't exist. You know what it is? It's actually not even the Eucharist participation. Them voting is them being made in the image of the government. That's their status. That's what it is. It's that is their value. That's the metaphysical status of their existence is that they get to vote. Like it's like a part of it. Like they're like, no, this is a part of my human nature that I vote. It's a part of my ontology that I have a vote because I'm talking and I must have opinions and my opinions obviously matter and they need to influence other people's things and that's what I'm here for. And it makes sense because from a Christian lens, because we're made in the image of God, it's not just our capabilities in that folder, but it's our deontology that we're actually called into a specific kind of action being made in the image of God. If they're made in the image of the government, basically in the image of man, they then are called into specific types of duties, and the only thing they could link their duties to in this paradigm is basically just societal trends and the church of democracy.
You think that because I say universal suffrage, that means no suffrage. I'm talking about limited suffrage.
It's a part of, that's what it is. I don't even know if Great Debate Mate 8 is being facetious or sarcastic, but yeah, that's what it is. They link their dignity to voting.
So who?
It's their image bearer status, but it's the image of society, the image of materialism.
Gets to decide who gets the right to vote.
Didn't I literally just tell you who gets to decide who gets to vote?
Okay, so everyone who participates in this public service.
They can't comprehend a world before modernity. Exactly, Adam. When you get into like slavery in the Bible, it's all modern lens presentism. They're just like reflecting back through their
What are your
luxurious
thoughts
seats.
of the Catholic understanding of distributism within an Orthodox imperium? How could we best structure an orthodox society with the wisdom of the church in our post-industrial world?
I'm really sorry. That's a really good question. And I'm not capable of answering it. I'm sorry. I can't pretend I'm capable of answering that. I'm sorry. It's a wasted tax. You just wrote into the government in Jortlandia, and they just wrote you back and said, "We got your super chat, we got your Bob chat, and unfortunately, we can't help you."
Gets the right to vote.
That could be one way to do it. Yes.
Okay. And that anyone could do that. Who wanted to?
Yeah.
The third position. Well, I've heard the term third position in Slave by Truth, but I've heard it used in so many different political contexts that you're right. I wouldn't know what that is.
People.
I'll look it up right now, though. Do I have to look up specifically, though? Is it like third position in a specific type of context, or what? What is it? Tell me, truthers. Tell me. That's a posh question? Yeah, seriously. It's beyond me. What is it? I've seen this term so many times, but I've seen it, like, even Googling it, it's like there's a third position of every... It's like, do you know how many third positions just popped up? Fascism? I don't know. Fascism... When I look up fascism and people, how they use the term, I don't think, I've not seen too many people approach fascism without all of the extra morass and feelings about it and just discuss it objectively what it is. So let's discuss it. Let's discuss fascism, if that's what you mean by the third position. The reason that didn't come to mind is because I don't think you can escape any or all of the aspects of fascism. I don't think any view, even an anti-fascist, will be in a performative contradiction at some point. But let's talk about it. Authoritarianism. I think there's no way you can have an ordered society without some level of acceptable authoritarianism. Fascism rejects democratic principles. Well, that can't be true. Because if you granted democratic principles and you extrapolated them to be fully democratic, democracy could overturn democratic principles. So a democracy, valuing the principles of democracy in order to achieve anti-democracy, is not actually a contradiction. Ultranationalism. Fascism promotes an intense sense of national pride and identity, often with an emphasis on racial purity. Yeah, well, the last part just spoils the well a little bit. You can have national pride, racial purity, like that would mean that Japan is wrong for having a sense of national pride tied to their ethnic identity. Why is that wrong anyway? Like, I don't have enough purity in me to argue the purity aspect of that. I'm more of a cultural supremacist and a theological supremacist, but the way they write it, people just assume that you're going to scoff at it and be like, "Oh, that's disgusting." It's like, really? They're all like this. Oh my gosh, these nationalists, it's really disgusting me that there would be a people that would actually advocate for national pride and tie it to ethnic identity. Oh, that's great. We're actually doing a talk about that next week. You should come. I can't. I'm going to Japan. Okay, you idiot. You're going to Japan? I'm sorry. Are you going to Japan to experience Somalia? Dummies. Militarism. Another thing, you can't really avoid it. Fascism glorifies military power, strong military presence. What would be wrong with that? Imagine having a nation that was like, you know what? I think we should have a nation that really doesn't value being able to protect itself. I think that's a great idea. Ugh, I can't believe you. I mean, Think about that at the house level. It's like, imagine a dad buys some firearms and is like, I just want firearms to protect the house. And the kids, in this case, the citizens, are all like, I can't believe you. I can't believe how much you're glorifying military power and strong defense. What a sicko, Dad. Draco, $5. Andrew debating Rick James' daughter. Appreciate your work. Yeah, seriously. Didn't know they made a Barbie Rick James. Appreciate it. Appreciate the call back to the 70s and the 80s. The cocaine. Degeneracy. Natural hierarchy. Okay, natural hierarchy. What system can even deny natural hierarchy? What system can deny the descriptive fact that there's always a natural hierarchy? What, are you gonna have an unnatural hierarchy? What's the alternative? We're done with these natural hierarchies. We need some unnatural ones. What's the alternative? No hierarchy? Well, you need a hierarchy to determine that. You need an authority to say we're not having any authority. It's a contradiction. Anarchism. No authority. No hierarchy. It doesn't even exist. There's no place you can even point to where there's not a hierarchy that emerges. Cult of personality. Leaders often cultivate a cult of personality to gain the power. Well, that's true in any sense of political movement that becomes popular. Why wouldn't a spoken person, a good statesman who represents the values of a view, how is it the case that they wouldn't emerge? By the way, the cult of personality is often tied to the natural hierarchy. So, can you imagine? I don't know. Are there cults of personalities who are anti-fascist? Yes. So why is that wrong now? I'm sorry. Your cult of personality that's anti-fascistic fits one or two of these categories. What are you gonna do about it? So yeah, I don't know if that's the third position. Honestly, if you know what it looks like, the third position, it's not like a binary or even a third option that's strictly just a third option. What it looks like is the things I listed: ultranationalism, militarism, suppression of opposition, natural hierarchy, totalitarianism, cult of personality. Oh, I missed that one, by the way. Fascist regimes typically suppress dissent, oppositional thought, and censorship through propaganda and violence. Oh yeah, cool. You're gonna tell me that living through the Karunka thing, you didn't experience basically a scientific type of dictatorship in a sense from left-leaning anti-fascists? That's funny. But I was saying is that it looks like these things I just listed, that you know how you change the levels of things on in a music, like on a track or something. I feel like we're essentially moving these things, each of these things, higher and lower on a levels program. Like there's no system that would be fully absent all of the things that I just listed as characteristics of fascism. All you would be looking at is these things are either on a 2 or a 3 or a 7 or a 10. You know, you're just doing the settings like before you play a video game. 50 big buckaroonies from Brian Forney. Thank you so much. W's in the chat. Everybody like that comment, please. Give him some love for giving Jortlandia love. He says, if a country's ability to imprison me entitles me a vote, any country I vacation to ought to hold an emergency vote so I can chime in before they lock me up. That's a good point, Brian, because not only in principle, that's a great clap back to that chick, but also it forces her to abide by and affirm strict citizenship, which is counter to a lot of their narratives, right, Brian? So that's like a double whammy right there. I'm going to remember that one if this ever comes up. Because I actually assume some of her listeners thought that went well for her. And I bet you they're going to borrow this like, well, I have a stake in the matter. That's what they're going to say. I have a stake in the matter because I'm here. Because I'm a leech. Well, I'm a leech of the society. I'm a maggot. I'm a parasite, so I deserve to vote. Okay. Panini, by her own standard, in a roundabout way, she could use her own argumentation, and she would actually have to oppose abortion, because the life of the person inside the womb, inside the woman, is a stakeholder in the choice of the woman, but yet it gets no vote in the matter of what happens. Hey, JB, can you upload the raw audio of Derp L's in the chat? Would love to use it myself. Use it where? Or use it where, sir? Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum-bum. Can you answer my question? Can you answer my question? Please answer. All right. All right, a little more on this. I don't know how much I can take of the Predator, but...
People could do it if they're willing to give up X amount of years of their lives for unpaid service so that they could then vote.
But it's not unpaid service because the government would be paying for their food and their housing.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be getting anything additional to that.
Okay, well, why not just have civil servants who are already...
Because civil servants have specific jobs to do, like, working at the DMV and stuff like that, and working in the Social Security office.
This is one more thing. I'll keep this shorter, but I'm seeing all the tie-ins between feminism and voting, and then their view on the House. And the House is like a reflection of society, a reflection of the church, the brokenness of the church, maybe even. Churches, I'm saying colloquially. But when her argument is essentially the same inside the House. It's like, well, I'm in the House, and I'm at the effect of the House, so therefore I should have an equal vote on the House. An equal vote. Where it's like, that would never work in a house or a company. There has to be the head. There has to be the head of the house, ultimately. Why? Because you have to have a guarantor, one. Two, you have to have someone who makes an executive decision overall so that the responsibility can be declared. If it's equal, it just doesn't, it's not only dysfunctional, but nowhere in even in ownership or running a company exists a 50-50 distribution of ownership of anything. But that's essentially what the feminist is arguing. Their argument against family dynamics and men and women stuff is reflective of feminism, their roles and duties and what they should and shouldn't get out in society, and they're completely mirroring each other. So it's like they're in this constant loop. It's almost like you can't tell where if the chicken or the egg. It's like, was it the rejection of family traditions and this hierarchical pattern, right? That's clear in every society. Is it the rejection of traditional norms, or is it the other way around? Does feminism come in, poison everything, and then the effects of that are reflected in the family? The other Kyle, $5. I have a steak in my freezer, therefore I should be able to vote. Yeah, totally.
So you're basically saying anyone who does community service should get the right to vote?
No, some sort of civil occupational service under the state. That could be like civil firefighting work, maybe. It could be civil paramedic work. It could be there's all sorts of different things you can look at for stakeholder democracy. When we've seen it applied around the world, it's been somewhat successful.
And do the laws apply to everyone in the society or just the...
Stakeholder makes a little more sense, but then I guess I would, like, if let's say, couldn't you buy in? It's not like the voting thing is suddenly sorted out if we limit, let's say we repeal the 19th and then even make it illegal, not possible for many men to vote, okay? It's not like it's sorted out the sort of attributes on a baseball card of who the voter would be. And stakeholder, like, let's say, if you had enough money, couldn't you buy a stake in something you didn't know shit about? That's the one limitation here I would see as a pushback, is like, someone could be a rich dipshit and buy into the stake of a company or some operations or some industry they don't know anything about. Now, would it be a good idea to buy a stake in something you don't know about? I don't know, because you could have an advisor. If you were rich, you could have an advisor who's basically guiding you. And so it doesn't really solve the problem of ignorance or knowledge being the necessary condition for, in this case, stakeholder. Like, you know, because you could buy some stake in the Yankees and you don't even know what third base means. You know what I mean? You can just be a dummy and be like, yeah, I don't know. Someone told me it's a good idea.
People who choose
they
to
still
participate
apply
in
to
this
everyone.
democracy.
Yeah.
Okay. So how can you create and apply a law to people who are not represented? I just don't understand. Morally, how do you justify?
There's nothing immoral about it.
There's nothing immoral about. I mean, but that's
like,
kind of
I
like
would say it's
consent.
more immoral. Why is it moral for an 18-year-old to nullify the vote of a 41-year-old if the 18-year-old doesn't even know what they're voting for? How's that moral?
Well, because the 18-year-old is still subject to the laws of the state.
Yeah, but they don't
If an
even know
18-year-old
what they're voting for.
Can an 18-year-old go to jail for 20 years?
A 16-year-old can. Should they be able to vote?
16-year-olds can't go to jail.
Yes, they can. 16-year-olds can go to jail for life. Should they be able to vote?
I mean, no, but why?
Oh, I didn't see that one. That's brutal.
Why not? Why not? The laws apply to them, though.
Why would a 16-year-old be going?
Hang
to
on,
jail
I don't
for
understand.
that,
Because you murdered someone.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, if you
Yeah.
murder someone, that's a whole.
So I don't understand. Why can't he vote? The laws apply to him. Why can't he vote?
Yeah, but we all understand that.
No, we all understand it's not an argument. Why
We all
does a 16-year-old get to vote even though all the laws
Can you imagine the predator saying that? We understand.
apply to the 16-year-old? Why does he get to vote?
Not all the lives apply. They start in juvenile detention and then at a.
That's another argument that came up with me and Rob, is that a lot of these people, at least the more trained ones in the defense of voting, what ends up coming up is immutable characteristics. Like, the argument is that you shouldn't, you shouldn't be disenfranchised based on immutable characteristics. And I'm like, isn't age? You didn't choose your age. You can't change your age. And they're like, yeah, but then they're like, no, that's different though.
So laws apply to 16-year-olds?
But you're retried at 18.
So
like when you
laws
start at
apply to 16-year-olds?
Some laws, of course.
Okay,
yes.
great. Why can't they vote then?
So babies should get the right to vote?
That's
I mean,
my
you're a
question
minor.
to you. That makes no
This tactic is so annoying. They say the thing that refutes them back to you in a way that, like, they're refuting you. They're like, no, he's internal to your view. Barbie Rick James.
no sense. Exactly. So why do we limit it to 18?
Well, that's the age that we've defined as being illegal.
So I have an even more extreme example of my own insane logic? What do you think about that, Andrew? I just gave you even a more insane entailment of my position. What do you think about that?
Adult. That's the age that we as a country have universally agreed with our right to vote is.
Yeah, but what
the age
makes
of
that a
legal
good
adult.
idea? Just
That's
because
the
you
age of
arbitrarily.
consent. That's the age
Yeah,
of-
but just because you arbitrarily say, for instance, that because you're 18 and you're an adult, like you can't buy cigarettes.
Can't hold an internal critique. This is so common, Bowie. Like I'm dealing with all the Mormons online. They don't know what an internal critique is.
You can't buy beer. You can't rent a car, but you're an adult. And now you can vote in the
So would you like to
participation of
lower the
democracy.
age of
At
an
least
adult?
raise it.
So you'd like to raise it.
At least raise it.
So you would like to universally raise the age
30.
to vote. I think that
At
would be a better
least
idea
30.
than like not
No.
allowing
What I
anyone.
said is at least do that. But the thing is, like, you're actually inconsistent here. Your whole argument is to say if laws affect people, they should have a right to vote. But we have an entire.
You know what I think is happening here? I think people are seeing how popular Andrew is, and they're willing to volunteer themselves as a punching bag. It's like a punching bag economy. They're like, "I'll be your piñata." You know what I mean? It's like a dare. You know what I mean? You know those people who fight MMA people, like they spar with them. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get knocked out, but it'll be good for my channel. I mean, in a sense, they're kind of smart just from that position, but they just don't care, apparently. They're just like, I don't care. I'm just a kid. I'm just a little Barbie predator. You know? Just young. People think I'm stupid anyway. I'm young, so what does it matter to me? I mean, Andrew honestly has a lot more to lose with a lot of these people. Right? Andrew has way more to lose debating any of these people. You know, he has to be perfect, right? He has to basically say it all correct and do all the things and be super consistent. One little flub, and it's over. One moment of not being able to, I don't know, say the 3 branches of government, it's over. Or, I don't know, open an olive jar. But from their perspective, there's nothing. What? You expected to get your ass beat.
Cast of people.
Liberals are so bad at arguing that olive jars do better against Andrew.
From the age 17 down who laws apply to and can't vote. And you just are like, you shrug that off like you didn't contradict yourself.
I'm pretty sure it has something to do with
I remember the promise. Don't you worry about that. Don't you worry about that, Extanglia. It's getting nice around here. We're in spring now, so thank you for reminding me.
Development. But we've all, like...
But I wish you didn't bring it up because, you know, I was hoping people forgot about it so that the cut to wasn't telegraphed.
You have to have an
not fully
age
developed till what, 25 according to the studies?
But how do you have a society in which you don't have an age that someone becomes a leader?
I agree, but why couldn't you have a society in which you had stakeholder democracy? It would be.
Andrew should put an olive jar graphic T-shirt on the Crucible.
It's the same logic.
So if you're saying that we should not...
It's a form of clout boosting because Andrew's haters will pick them up into a counter group. It's like, it's like counter industry, Andrew calls it. It makes sense.
Disenfranchise children. Why would you then disenfranchise
like,
people?
Beat me up. Just beat me up.
Or legal adults.
When did I...
Hey, he's right. Yeah, Andrew's the Sean Strickland of debate. That's
ever
correct.
make the claim that I wanted children to be able to vote?
You just said that if everyone should have the right to
I
vote.
told you that your view
greasy olive jar trading
was
card.
Inconsistent. If it is the case propositionally, you say, Andrew, if laws apply to people, they should be able to vote, except, everybody's
3 branches of government, Nina, Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
17 and under. That's inconsistent.
Because the laws do apply to children.
It's inconsistent and a contradiction.
But laws do apply to children.
What about the laws that don't? What about the laws that don't? What about the laws where you're 17 years old and you can be tried as an adult?
Well, those are to protect public freedom. I mean,
why do I have the feeling that she has a page, but she also sells beaded necklaces that she makes?
But everyone loses civil liberties when they are a danger to the public.
Yeah, but
that's everyone.
Do you understand that you're making a contradiction when you say if laws should apply to all people should have a right to vote because they have laws which can be applied, they can be sent to prison, was your example. That would have to include everyone under the age of 18.
But people under the age of 18 don't go to adult prisons.
Yes, they do all the time.
Don't.
Yes, they do.
What's your source?
That is, you want me to give you sources of 16, 17-year-olds tried as adults and sent to adult prisons?
Okay, but that's like an exception for exclusively horrific crimes. I mean, those are violent offenders.
Does the law
Link in bio for dread beads.
apply to them or not?
To violent offenders?
She could do math with her bangs. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh, that's really funny. I don't think I saw that in the chat. That's amazing. Yeah, you know what that is? That's an ethnic. It's an ethnicity counter. The abacus. It's the equality abacus.
If you are a threat to public safety, yes.
Okay.
Everyone who
then
is a
if
threat
the
to public
law
safety,
applies to them and they can be sent to jail, then by your logic, they should be able to vote, which
But for
means
those
you're in
offenders, they are-
contradiction.
I just want to mop my bathroom.
those offenders, they are sent to juvenile detention centers until they turn 18,
Abacus
and then they are
braids.
sent to an adult
That's how
prison.
they learn to count now in school.
They are still
They're
tried as a
sent
child.
often to adult centers, even at 17, to adult prisons.
You can be sentenced as an adult, but you can't be sent to an adult prison at the age of 16.
This would depend widely on the state that you're in. It's not rigorous.
I don't even know it. Yeah, she's like... Can you imagine her jumping out of a Jack in the Box? You know how many people would return the toy?
Enforced across
Can
the
you
board like
imagine
you think. There's
that
not like
springing out at you.
I don't think there's federal laws which say this. But
Well, then I
even
think
if it were
that's
the case,
wrong.
I'll just grant it.
Well, then that's wrong.
I'll even grant the
Wait a second. Was this chick then on a panel? Did we miss a panel? Because I know Andrew couldn't make another panel, like after this or something. But was there a panel, or is that tonight? Like with this chick? Is this chick on a panel?
entire thing, it still wouldn't matter. Laws apply to them. They can still be sent to prison. They fit both of your criteria. Therefore, if you say they shouldn't be able to vote, your worldview's in contradiction.
Well, then I think that's wrong. I don't believe that children should be tried as adults until they have become adults.
So
Did
no-
you guys watch the most brutal part of this whole thing was when she was in the hot seat and Andrew was cross-examining her about morality. It was so bad. Poor thing. She was like, it's bad because it's bad. Why do these people insist on wearing sea garbage in their hair? I know.
The
I
laws
disagree with
apply to
that.
children.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
Well, then why shouldn't they be able to?
Like, if her body was recovered in the ocean, like, her parents would never know. They would just think it was
Well,
A
trash.
threat to public safety is always applies to
Safety.
everyone. Threats to public safety always apply to everyone.
Yeah, but why shouldn't they be able to vote if laws apply to them? That's your example.
Laws apply to children, but they are not in practice punished in the same way that they apply to adults. It's applied
Can they be
differently.
punished?
Of course they can
Then
be
why
punished.
can't they vote?
But you have to have some way to maintain societal control. Children aren't just allowed to do whatever the fuck they want because they're
Right.
kids.
You need to be able to have some sort of societal control. So
Yes.
this would mean necessarily disenfranchising some people, wouldn't it?
It would mean necessarily disenfranchising children. Yes, they're not.
no.
You're a child. That's our point. There are adults who think like children. You know what I mean? You never hear an argument that children shouldn't vote because of their size. Never hear it that, oh, why shouldn't children vote? Well, because they're small. They're just so small. Look at them. I mean, how is that little thing going to vote? No, it's because their brain. It's because they can't fully conceptualize what it is you're offering them. So the argument is pretty consistent, actually. Say, okay, cool. There's a bigger person who's a little bit taller, who has braids in her hair, or who does Hawk Tuah in a microphone when drunk on the street. They don't have the brain power to vote.
Oh, it would also mean disenfranchising prisoners. Do you want prisoners to vote on their right to own guns in a prison?
Not their right to own guns in a prison.
Well, then you're
But I
disenfranchising
do think
them.
that people who were in prison and then leave prison should then have
Felons?
the right to vote.
But they're disenfranchised currently under the law, right?
You know what you need? You need men and women leading a charge. Well, this could backfire real bad. The people who are so-called based, right? Because they don't want women to vote, but even like myself, I'd be willing to forfeit my own vote. But if there was like a charge or like a campaign to willfully remove your vote, you would just have a vacuum effect, so it wouldn't work the same way.
And I have to tell you
the
directly
hell?
and personally that I regret voting for you for
What the hell? What the hell was that?
Franchising some people, wouldn't it?
It would mean necessarily disenfranchising children. Yes, they're not.
No, it would also mean disenfranchising prisoners. Do you want
Yeah,
prisoners
dwarfs can vote.
to vote on their right to own
They shouldn't be able to.
guns in a prison?
Not their right to own guns in a prison.
Well, then you're
But I do
disenfranchising
think
them.
that people who were in prison and then leave prison should then have
Felons?
the right to vote.
But they're disenfranchised currently under the law, right?
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
they
If you're
are.
a felon, you can't vote.
Yes. Oh, well, once they leave, yes, I do think that that's disenfranchisement, and I think Florida just rolled that back.
Yeah,
For
but
Florida.
what's wrong with disenfranchising like murderers for life?
What's wrong with disenfranchisement? Well, they would be in jail for life. If
No,
they
no, no.
committed a
They're
murder.
out of jail. They're just felons, so they can't vote.
Well, I think that felons should be able to vote once they
Should
have
felons
left.
be able to own guns?
No, because
Oh, well, I don't understand you. So you're again,
But do
you
you
are it's so
understand-
inconsistent with your disenfranchising.
Pookie, do you understand?
What?
So, did she just call him Pookie?
Disenfranchisement should exist so long as someone is a threat to public safety. The reason why
Only betas vote. Oh, Maryland, the Sovsit. Sovsit is the worst position.